leadership is not limited to just Homo sapiens. It plays out in the animal world. We know this. But if we were to identify maybe a unique feature on the evolutionary landscape where humans appear distinct, that might be in shared intentionality. You see, it's rather odd that humans would work with, support, defend, sacrifice for others who are not blood relatives or even our own species. But we have uniquely evolved a way of getting people, often strangers or even adversaries, to work together, to work for us, not against or without us. And given this shared intentionality, how is it that we can cooperate successfully across diverse and often malaligned social groups to the mutual benefit of all members? The answer is trust. And for leaders, trust is the cash flow of shared intentionality. Discovering just how vital trust is was the surprising finding from research we conducted into how organizations lead change and transformation during the global pandemic. The theme of trust emerged as significant. We interviewed nearly 150 mid and senior level leaders across retail and energy sectors, and almost all of them in some way recognized the same 6 factors in winning and losing trust in the organizations. There were 3 negative factors: inconsistency, weird self-interest, and attending the 1%. And 3 positive factors, which were courageous empathy and compassion, real conversations, and serotonin hits. So let's go through those. Factor 1, inconsistency. The fact is, in change, most leaders are frequently sending mixed messages to their teams and their colleagues. Mixed messages about strategy, about priorities, about goals, career opportunities, resource allocations. Most leaders assume charity from their teams and colleagues with a "it's just out of my control" excuse. However, this is actually misplaced because a leader's equity of trust may actually gradually devalue without them even being aware of it, like a slow fall. But there is hope. Activities we saw that alleviated inconsistency were things like one-voice presentations, where normally siloed businesses will communicate together publicly, or setting the record straight Q&A plenaries, or reimagining transparent processes for career opportunities or resource sharing, and things like Control-Alt-Delete exercises, where old corporate messaging is just erased. Factor 2, weird self-interest. We saw a cultural smoking gun in weird Western world. By weird, I mean Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic, where the ethic of autonomy tended to place individual interests or values as paramount, assuming we are autonomous selves, empowered and engaged to own our own careers and futures. It's a very Western view and hugely valid at individual level. But it tends to dissolve altruism and service mindset a little bit higher up and raises a natural barrier, maybe born of self-preservation, that seems to counteract trust. When we observed organizations during the pandemic, we frequently saw leaders not sharing in the privations of their team. Privations like reduced working hours, reduced pay and bonuses. In fact, maybe a minor example, but many leaders continued to turn up to the office suited and booted, whilst their teams were at home in sweatpants, wrestling with new laptops, new digital platforms, and new ways of working, whilst juggling kids, cats, and more calories. But what we noticed was to sustain trust, leaders can't sustain privilege. But there is hope again. We saw things like driving environmental, social, and sustainability issues to the top of the agenda worked. We saw creating altruism awards worked. And we saw increasing the diversity and promotions and succession plans seem to mitigate that negative self-interest. Okay, factor 3, attending the 1%. 99% of the time, team members do an adequate job. They get it done, unnoticed, often producing good or even excellent results. But 1% of the time, things go awry and it's not good enough. In change, this is often when the leaders interact most with the team via the 1% deviance of expectation. This focused attention on shortcomings undermines leader-member trust, as members experience what we call in psychology automatic vigilance. It has the mental state of failure, and people start hiding. Okay, so those were the negative 3 factors. Now the positive factors. Factor 4, courageous empathy and compassion. There are few things as critical in leadership as empathy. The power of empathy for generating trust is found in a leader's ability to show concern for people's plights and problems, and to understand the dynamic of expectations by which to adapt their actions. But stepping out with empathy as a leader requires real courage. Courage to ask questions like, what do people expect to see from me? How do they individually and collectively wish to be seen? We notice the answers to these questions can be surprising and unexpected. One story from an engineering company described how on Zoom virtual meetings, certain members of the team felt vulnerable or even embarrassed about the perceived size of their apartment, and that meant that they would not turn their cameras on during the calls. It took the leader some delicate digging to uncover this and resolve it by providing the team with a digital image background for them all to apply. Suddenly, all team members were joining with their cameras on, subtly done. This example, and many like it, showed that empathy should be accompanied by compassion. Specifically, we must learn to be gentle and caring in how we do things, not just what we do, but how we do it. Okay, factor 5, real conversations. It's clear leaders must be experts in engaging in real conversations with their colleagues and peers. They must create what is called emotional and cognitive proximity through shared language and emotive labeling of events and experiences. Indeed, conversations between people has a chemistry. In neuroscience, it's called synchronicity, whereby simply telling a story, one person transplants ideas and emotions into the other's brain. These real conversations are not just feedback culture. They're not just 360. It's much more than that. It's about giving people the power to express their feelings one to another in ways that strengthen relationship for the purposes of searching for the feel-good state, the safe space, the mental space where we can both inhabit without anxiety. One global energy business had an ambition to ignite a group-wide entrepreneurship spirit. They'd invested heavily in programs, deployed technologies and people, but the change narrative from the town halls they were having just wasn't sticking. It lacked translation and relevance. For them, the big shift was stop dictating to the global population and empower the regions and markets to drive their own real change narratives. Trust them to explore new ways of working, prioritize their own ideas, and challenge the value chain of their own work activities. But creating that real conversations at local levels was in fact the priority. Okay, factor 6, serotonin hits through targeted praise and recognition. It's no surprise that the most powerful positive means for creating trust is frequent and specific praise and recognition. By that I mean praise linked to actual work outputs and performance, not generic and unattributable ones. These serotonin hits should traverse collective to individual, applying like a continuum of tools from verbal praise to financial rewards, and creativity in the continuum is key. Also, praise and recognition should be public where possible. Tell stories, and recipients should be selected without prejudice. Don't just select from the in-team. Select from diverse social groupings, gender, culture, and race. You see, leaders praising and recognizing team and peers reaffirms a sense of belonging, a desire to win together. It gives members something positive to trust in, an acknowledgement of good works, a sense that we're winning something, no matter how small that is. These serotonin hits are vital for sustaining the competitive mindset, and it's where the growth happens, both at human and at business levels. One thing we spotted loud and clear in all the stories we heard was that when you have trust, you acquire the potential for one team. Interests coalesce, me becomes we. And trust is the nexus. That was the sure thing. It wasn't something we had looked out for, but it was clear that successful change and transformation starts from there. It starts from the we. It starts from shared intentionality and trust. With these findings, I'm sure it will help organizations engineer themselves a much more sustainable, whether it's pandemic or energy transition, and much more successful future that's much more engaged with the workforce through the medium of trust.